If you're over 60, there's a good chance you've been told something simple for years. Eat more fruit. And in general, that's good advice. But here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. Not every fruit helps an older body in the same way. In fact, 3 very common fruit choices can quietly work against you after 60, especially if you're dealing with blood sugar issues, digestion problems, extra weight around the middle, high blood pressure, or a long list of medications. One of them can even change how certain prescription drugs behave in your body. And that's not a small detail. That's a serious one. I'm Dr. Jessica Williams, and in this video, I want to help you stop guessing, because this is not about cutting out fruit and living in fear of every sweet bite. It's about understanding which fruit choices become risky, misleading, or simply unhelpful as the body changes with age, and which ones can support your brain, your gut, your heart, your energy, and even your bones. And make sure you stay with me, because the last fruit I recommend every day is the one most people never see coming. One of the biggest misconceptions I hear from adults over 60 is this: if it came from nature, it must be healthy for me. That sounds reasonable, but your body at 65 is not your body at 25. Your digestion may be slower, your muscle mass may be lower, your insulin response may not be as forgiving. Your kidneys may need more support. Your appetite cues may be less reliable. And if you're taking medications for cholesterol, blood pressure, heart rhythm, anxiety, sleep, or inflammation, then food is no longer just food. It can become part of the chemistry. That's why I want you to think about fruit in a smarter way. Not just as sweet and healthy, but as something with a job. Does it help control blood sugar or push it up too fast? Does it support regular digestion or leave you hungrier an hour later? Does it deliver fiber and hydration or mostly sugar in a prettier package? Does it play nicely with your medications or create hidden problems? Once you start looking at fruit that way, the choices get much easier. Let's start with the first fruit many older adults should be very careful with, and this one surprises people every single time: grapefruit. Now let me be clear, grapefruit is not junk food. It contains vitamin C. It can be refreshing. It looks clean, bright, and healthy. That's exactly why it fools so many people. The problem is not that grapefruit is inherently bad. The problem is that grapefruit can interact with certain medications in a way that makes those drugs either stronger than intended or less effective than intended. And if you're over 60, the odds that you're taking at least one medication affected by grapefruit are much higher than they were decades ago. This matters because older adults are far more likely to be taking statins for cholesterol, blood pressure medicines, medications for heart rhythm, anti-anxiety medications, allergy medications, or other drugs that rely on very specific absorption and breakdown pathways in the body. Grapefruit can interfere with those pathways. In plain English, it can change how much of the drug ends up circulating in your bloodstream. That means what should have been a normal dose can suddenly behave like too much. And too much can mean more side effects, more strain on the body, and more problems you don't immediately connect back to breakfast. That's what makes grapefruit dangerous for the wrong person. It doesn't feel dramatic. You're not eating a cheeseburger and thinking, I know this is a bad idea. You're eating half a grapefruit or drinking grapefruit juice and thinking you're doing something healthy. Meanwhile, the interaction is happening silently. And this is where mature adults need to be especially careful. After 60, your margin for error is often smaller. You may be more sensitive to dehydration. Your liver and kidneys may not clear things the way they once did. Your medication list may be longer. So even though grapefruit seems light and harmless, it can be one of the worst fruit choices if you're taking the wrong prescription. If you love grapefruit, this does not automatically mean you must never touch it again. It means you need to be smart. Ask your doctor or pharmacist specifically whether grapefruit interacts with your medications. Don't assume, don't guess. Don't rely on a vague memory from years ago. This is one of those cases where a 2-minute question can save you from a very preventable problem. And here's something else people miss. It's not just fresh grapefruit. Grapefruit juice matters too. So do certain related citrus fruits in some cases. That's why this first fruit earns a place on the caution list. Not because it looks unhealthy, but because it hides its risk so well. But the second fruit trap is even more common because it doesn't come with a medication warning. It comes with a health halo. And that's exactly why so many older adults overeat it without thinking twice. The second fruit choice many seniors should limit is most dried fruit snacks, especially things like raisins, sweetened dried cranberries, dates, dried mango, and similar grab-and-go mixes that seem harmless because the portion looks so small. This is where the brain gets tricked. You see a tiny box of raisins, a small handful of dried fruit, or a snack pack that fits in your palm, and your mind says, that can't be much. But dried fruit is concentrated fruit. The water has been removed, the volume has shrunk, and what's left is a tighter, denser package of sugar and calories. So now you're not eating a big, filling piece of fresh fruit with water and bulk. You're eating something easy to chew, easy to overconsume, and much less satisfying for the amount of carbohydrate you just took in. That matters a lot after 60. Many older adults are already dealing with pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, stubborn weight gain, or energy crashes in the afternoon. Dried fruit can fit into a healthy plan in very measured amounts, but the problem is that most people don't eat measured amounts. They eat by habit, they eat by convenience, they eat straight from the container. And before they know it, they've taken in far more sugar than they would have from the fresh version of that fruit. There's another issue here, and it's satiety. Fresh fruit usually slows you down. You bite it, chew it, it contains water, it takes up space in the stomach. Dried fruit does the opposite. It disappears fast. That means your brain doesn't register the same sense of fullness, even though your blood sugar still notices the load. So an older adult may snack on dried fruit thinking it's a clean, natural choice, then wonder why they feel sleepy, hungry again, or oddly snacky later in the day. And if the dried fruit is sweetened, glazed, or mixed into healthy trail mixes with added sugar, yogurt coating, or chocolate, the problem grows quickly. Now you're not just dealing with concentrated fruit, you're dealing with a dessert disguised as wellness food. This is especially important for seniors trying to lose weight without eating tiny meals all day. If a food doesn't satisfy you, it becomes expensive metabolically. It uses up calories and carbohydrates without giving much back in fullness. That's a bad trade after 60, when protecting muscle, steadying blood sugar, and maintaining energy become much more important than chasing healthy-looking snacks. I also want to point out something practical. Many adults over 60 have dental concerns, dry mouth, or gum sensitivity. Sticky dried fruit can cling to the teeth, and when you're grazing on it often, that's not ideal. Again, I'm not saying dried fruit is poison. I'm saying it's one of the easiest fruit choices to misjudge, and that makes it risky. So what should you do if you like it? Treat most dried fruit as a measured add-on, not a casual snack. A spoonful in oatmeal is different from a handful at your desk. A small amount paired with nuts or yogurt is different from eating it alone by the bag. Portion matters more than people think. And hold on to that thought, because later I'm going to tell you about one very specific dried fruit that is the exception to this rule. In fact, it may be one of the smartest fruits for older adults when used the right way. But before we get there, we need to talk about the third fruit mistake. And this one hides in plain sight in kitchens, nursing homes, cafeterias, and grocery carts everywhere. The third fruit older adults should watch carefully is fruit packed in heavy syrup, sweetened fruit cups, and yes, even those fruit products that sound wholesome because the word fruit is on the label. This category causes trouble because it takes something healthy and strips away the part your body needed most: fiber. Once you remove fiber or drown fruit in syrup, the experience changes completely. You're no longer getting the same steadying effect on blood sugar, digestion, and appetite. You're getting sweetness with a health label attached. I've seen this happen in very everyday routines. Someone gives up donuts at breakfast and replaces them with a little bowl of canned fruit cocktail in syrup. They think they made a major upgrade. But what often happens next? They're hungry again quickly. Their blood sugar is less stable. Their energy dips. And because the meal didn't satisfy them, they end up reaching for crackers, toast, or something sweet later anyway. That's the problem with these processed fruit choices. They can create the illusion of discipline without delivering the benefit of real nourishment. A peach packed in syrup is not doing the same job as a fresh peach. A fruit cup swimming in sweet liquid is not the same as biting into actual whole fruit. The body notices that difference even if the packaging doesn't. This matters even more for seniors because whole fruit often supports digestion, while sugary fruit products can work against it. Many adults over 60 already struggle with constipation, irregular appetite, reduced thirst, or difficulty managing blood sugar swings. Processed fruit products don't solve those problems well. In many cases, they quietly add to them. Now, if canned fruit is all you have access to sometimes, don't panic. This is where nuance matters. Fruit canned in water or its own juice is a much better option than fruit packed in heavy syrup. Rinsing it can help too. What I want you to avoid is the assumption that all fruit products are equal. They are not. One nourishes, another merely tastes fruity. And notice the pattern in these first three worst choices. The problem is not always the fruit itself. The problem is what age, medications, concentration, processing, and portion size do to that fruit in the real world. That's the kind of thinking that protects your health after 60. Now for the good news. There are fruits that work in the opposite direction. They support the body you have now, not the body you had 30 years ago. They help with the exact issues older adults ask me about most: brain fog, constipation, blood sugar control, inflammation, heart health, cravings, and staying regular without feeling deprived. And the first one is one of the most powerful daily choices you can make, especially if you want your food to help your brain as much as your waistline. The first fruit I recommend almost every day after 60 is berries. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries are what I call high-value fruit. They give a lot back for what they cost you metabolically. They're rich in fiber. They're packed with plant compounds that help fight oxidative stress. They tend to be easier on blood sugar than many sweeter, denser fruit choices. And perhaps most exciting for older adults, berries have been studied for their connection to healthy brain aging. That matters because after 60, people notice little changes before they notice big ones. Names take longer to come back. Focus slips. Mental fatigue shows up sooner. You walk into a room and pause for a second, wondering why you're there. Some of that is normal. But we also know that what you eat can either support the brain or fail to support it. And berries are one of those foods that seem to offer real advantages. What makes berries so useful is that they don't just help one system. They work on multiple levels at once. Their fiber helps slow absorption. Their water content helps with volume and fullness. Their deep pigments come from compounds that act like bodyguards against everyday wear and tear. So instead of giving you a quick sugar rush followed by a slump, berries tend to fit beautifully into a more stable eating pattern. This is why berries are such a smart choice at breakfast. Add them to plain yogurt, oatmeal, cottage cheese, or a high-protein breakfast, and suddenly the meal does more. It becomes friendlier to your blood sugar. It becomes more satisfying. It becomes less likely to send you hunting for toast or cookies 2 hours later. They're also one of the easiest fruits for portion control. That may sound small, but it matters. Compare a bowl of berries to a glass of juice or a pouch of dried fruit. The berries take up more space, slow you down more, and usually leave you more satisfied. That's a powerful difference when you're trying to eat well without feeling like you're constantly restricting yourself. And here's something mature adults appreciate. Berries feel like a treat without behaving like dessert. They taste sweet, but they don't usually carry the same blood sugar baggage as some other choices. That makes them a helpful bridge for people who want to eat healthier but still need something enjoyable. If cost is a concern, frozen berries are absolutely fine. In many cases, they're a fantastic option. No spoilage guilt, easy to portion, great in yogurt or oatmeal, and available year-round. You do not need an expensive organic berry arrangement in a crystal bowl to benefit. Simple works. If you're on a potassium-restricted diet or have advanced kidney disease, talk with your medical team about portions that make sense for you. But for most older adults, berries are one of the easiest daily wins in the kitchen. And yet, as good as berries are, the second fruit may be even more practical because it's cheap, familiar, portable, and sitting in grocery stores everywhere. Most people overlook it because it seems too ordinary. That's a mistake. The second fruit I recommend almost every day after 60 is the apple. I know, not flashy, not exotic, no trendy marketing. But apples are one of the best examples of a food becoming more powerful when you understand what it's actually doing. Apples bring fiber, especially the kind that helps with fullness and supports healthier cholesterol levels. They also provide crunch, water, and a slower eating experience, which sounds almost too simple until you realize how useful that becomes after 60. A lot of older adults struggle not just with what they eat, but with how fast and how mindlessly they eat. Apples naturally put on the brakes. You bite, chew, and work through it. That slows the whole meal down. And when meals slow down, the body gets a better chance to register fullness before overeating happens. The fiber in apples also makes them a strong choice for people trying to avoid those mid-morning or mid-afternoon crashes. An apple by itself is good. An apple paired with protein or healthy fat is even better. Think apple slices with peanut butter, or an apple alongside a few nuts, or chopped apples stirred into plain Greek yogurt. Now you have something sweet, filling, and much steadier than the average snack bar or cracker pack. Apples are also helpful for another reason older adults care about: digestion. Many seniors don't need more food volume as much as they need better food structure. They need fiber they'll actually eat consistently. Apples make that easier. And because they're so accessible, they fit real life. You can bring one in the car, keep one on the counter, slice one after dinner when the sweet craving hits. That's where healthy eating succeeds or fails, not in a perfect meal plan on paper, but in what you'll actually repeat. I also like apples because they create less confusion. You don't need to decode them. There's no syrup, no tiny portion that tricks you, no medication issue like grapefruit for most people. Just whole fruit doing whole fruit work. And let me say something important here. When I recommend apples, I mean the whole apple, not apple juice. Juice removes the very thing that makes apples so helpful in the first place. So if you're choosing between drinking your apple and chewing your apple, chew it. Your blood sugar, your appetite, and your digestive system will usually thank you. Now we get to the last fruit on the daily list, and this is the one I told you not to miss. Because after warning you about dried fruit earlier, it would be easy to assume all dried fruit belongs in the limited category. But one stands out in a very different way. The third fruit I recommend regularly after 60 is prunes. Yes, prunes. And if you almost rolled your eyes, stay with me because prunes may be one of the most underrated foods in healthy aging. Most people think of prunes as an old-fashioned remedy for constipation, and then they stop there. But prunes deserve a much better reputation than that. They can support regular bowel movements. They contain fiber. They contain natural compounds that seem to help the gut. And perhaps most surprisingly of all, they've also been studied for bone health in older women. That gets my attention immediately, because once we start talking about healthy aging, digestion and bone strength are not side topics. They are major quality of life issues. Let's start with the obvious part. Constipation is incredibly common after 60. Activity may be lower. Fluid intake may be inconsistent. Medications can slow the gut. Appetite changes can lead to less fiber overall. And many people normalize feeling bloated, heavy, backed up, or uncomfortable. They think it's just age. It doesn't have to be. Prunes can help here because they offer more than sweetness. They bring fiber and natural compounds that help soften and move stool. For some adults, a small daily portion works better than bouncing between doing nothing for a week and then overcorrecting with aggressive laxatives. The key, as always, is consistency and portion. Now here's where prunes separate themselves from most dried fruit. With raisins or sweetened dried cranberries, the main story is usually concentration and easy overeating. With prunes, the story is function. They actually do something useful for a very common over 60 complaint. That makes them different. And then there's the bone conversation. Older adults, especially women after menopause, are always being told to think about calcium, vitamin D, and exercise. All of that matters, but food patterns matter too. Prunes have been studied for their potential role in helping preserve bone health, which is incredibly interesting because falls and fractures can change the entire course of later life. Anything that may help support the skeleton naturally deserves serious attention. This does not mean prunes are magic. It does not mean you should eat half a bag and expect superhuman hips. It means prunes are one of those rare foods that check more than one aging-related box at the same time: digestion, satiety, and potentially bone support. That is a strong return on a small daily habit. Now, because I promised nuance, here it is. Prunes are still dried fruit. Portion still matters. If you have diabetes, count them honestly. If you have kidney concerns or a special diet, ask your provider what amount makes sense. More is not automatically better. In fact, too much can backfire and leave you uncomfortable. But for many older adults, something like a modest serving on a regular basis can be a very smart addition. This is why I love teaching mature adults how to think instead of what to memorize. If you memorize dried fruit is bad, you miss the exception. If you understand why most dried fruit is risky, then you can appreciate why prunes earn a different place on the list. So let's pull this all together. If you're over 60, the goal is not to fear fruit. The goal is to choose fruit that respects the realities of aging. That means being cautious with grapefruit if you take medications that may interact with it. It means limiting most dried fruit snacks that make sugar easy to overeat and hard to notice. And it means being very selective with fruit packed in syrup or heavily processed fruit products that look healthy but don't behave like whole fruit. On the other hand, if you want daily fruit choices that actually support the body you have now, start with berries for brain and blood sugar support, apples for fiber and steadier appetite, and prunes for digestion and one of the most surprising healthy aging benefits on the list. And if you only remember one thing from everything I said, remember this. After 60, the best fruit is not the sweetest, the most expensive, or the one with the best marketing. The best fruit is the one that gives your body something useful without creating a hidden problem in return. That's how smart eating works in real life. Not perfection, not fear, not trendy rules. Just better choices, repeated often enough to matter. So the next time you reach for fruit, pause for 1 second and ask yourself, is this helping my medications, my blood sugar, my digestion, my brain, and my long-term health? Or am I just assuming it's healthy because it's fruit? That one question can change your grocery cart, your breakfast, your snacks, and over time, even your energy. And that's exactly what I want for you. Not a shorter list of foods, a better understanding of the ones worth keeping.